everyone, this video is going to show you how to make a scrunchie using your Krafty Khoo kit set materials. It can be sewn by hand or you can use a sewing machine, which will be a lot faster. If you're brand new to sewing, I do have some tutorial videos on how to sew the basic stitches you need, and you can find the links to the videos in the description. Now let's get started. First of all, we'll attach the Me Made label if you are using one. If you are not attaching a label, you can skip to the next step. So lay your fabric out with the right side of the fabric facing up. Fold your Me Made label in half with the writing facing outwards as well. Place it along the top edge of your fabric, roughly at the midpoint of the length of your fabric. Now we'll hand sew a running stitch to attach the label into place. So sew a running stitch about 1/2 centimetre down from the top edge. Don't forget to thread your needle and tie a knot at the end so your thread doesn't come through. It doesn't have to be perfect, as this is simply a stitch to hold the label into place. So 2 or 3 stitches will be fine. Don't forget to tie a knot at the end. And then we will snip off. Okay, so the next step is to sew the scrunchie tube. So fold your fabric in half with the right sides of the fabric together. And we're going to pin it into place so it doesn't move when we sew. Use as many pins as you need to keep it into place, and just make sure that those top 2 edges are lined up nicely. Next, grab a pen, and what we're going to do is mark a little gap towards one end of your fabric. Draw a little line, and then roughly about 5 centimetres, draw another little line. Now this is a gap that we will be leaving open. We will need this gap to pull the scrunchie through at a later stage. Next, sew a straight line along the top edge of your tube. So sew it about 1 centimetre down from the top edge. If you are hand sewing, you can use a ruler to rule a straight line, which will make it easier for you to follow if you are hand sewing. Be sure to stop sewing as soon as you reach the start of that marked gap. Cut your thread and then restart at that second mark. If you are hand sewing, make sure you tie a knot at the end and at the start of your sewing. And if you are using a sewing machine, make sure you back tack just to reinforce the thread and keeping the pieces together. I will now use my sewing machine to sew my tube. So now we've sewn our tube. We will next pull the tube through the centre so the 2 tube ends will meet. We'll use a safety pin to make it easier. So grab your safety pin and pierce the end of the tube that is away from the gap you left. So the gap that I marked is on the right end of my tube, so that means I'm going to pierce the left end of my tube with my safety pin. Now we're going to use that safety pin as a guide to use with your fingers to push the tube through. Give it a little bit of a tug as you push through, and continue this until the 2 tube ends meet. Now, do not push the tube through the gap. We're pushing it right to the end so these two tube ends meet, and don't pull it all the way through. So it may need a little bit of a tug to get it there. Now this bit can be a little bit tricky. So we want the tube end here, the inner tube, to align with the outer tube. So it may take a little bit of maneuvering of both the inner and outer tubes to get them aligned. And we want to line up the two seams that we've got. So we've sewn that line in the inner tube and on the outer tube. We want them to line up. Next, we can remove the safety pin, or you might have already done that. Now we're going to sew this tube closed by hand sewing a back stitch roughly 1 centimetre down from the edge of the tube. So I'm just going to start at where my seams meet, but you can start anywhere along your tube. I've doubled my thread just to reinforce the thread. It makes it a little bit stronger. Don't forget to tie a knot at the end, so I'm just going to come back up again and tie a knot to finish. Great, and next comes the fun part. So you can pull your scrunchie through. We're going to find that gap that we had left earlier and essentially push the scrunchie tube through that gap. You can just use your fingers, and it might require a little bit of a tug to get it through. So keep pulling it through that gap. So I've got one end there, and now the other. And we can see our little Me Made label pop out there as well. Great, so now we've got a fully formed scrunchie tube. Next, we just have 2 more steps to go. We're going to add the elastic, and then we're going to sew that gap closed. So grab your piece of elastic, and we're going to pierce one end of the elastic with a safety pin. Find the gap that you made earlier. Might be a little bit tricky, but it should be by my seam here. And I'm going to pierce the safety pin through one edge of that gap. So essentially my elastic and my scrunchie are attached through the safety pin. Now grab your second safety pin and pierce the other end of your elastic and close it off. And like the same method we used earlier, we're going to use the safety pin as a guide to guide the elastic through the tube. So keep a hold of that safety pin and bunch up the scrunchie as you go along and pull through. Now, once you've reached your gap, push the safety pin through the gap. Great. I'm going to release that safety pin on one end of the fabric, of the elastic, and making sure I'm holding on tight to that end. I need to also hold on tight to the other piece of elastic. We don't want to lose the elastic, otherwise it's going to get lost in the middle of the tube. So before you undo the safety pin completely, double check you've got a good grip on both ends of the elastic. Next, what we're going to do is tie it off. So I like tying it off using the balloon tie-off method. So pretend you're tying off a balloon and tie it a knot there, pull tight. Next, kind of stretch out your scrunchie a little bit to make sure that it is not twisted and that it's all nice and even. Now you may think it looks complete, but we do still have that little gap that we have left open. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a lattice stitch to hand sew the gap closed. Now a lattice stitch is the best way to sew this gap because it does mean the stitching is invisible. If you're not comfortable with doing a lattice stitch, you can always do a straight stitch on top of the fabric. Just note that that means you will be able to see the stitching. Use a matching thread if you can. I'm using a purple. I do have a how to do a lattice stitch video tutorial. You can find the link to that one in the description below. And there we have it. We've now completed our very own me-made scrunchie. Now you can use this method to make your scrunchie for the mini size, the regular size and the jumbo size. Note that the jumbo is rather large, so it would be faster and a lot easier to use a sewing machine. And you're less likely to need the safety pins because it is easier to pull through using your hands.